I'm now going to introduce you to creating skeletons or doing rigging in order to be able to take objects and set them up to be animated. Now to do this, I'm going to start by just creating a basic shape. So I'm going to grab a cylinder. I'm going to reduce its size. Let's see. Got some subdivisions in there. I'm going to scale this up so I have something to work with. And then just for cleanup's sake, I'm going to delete these edges and the vertice that's right there so I don't have any n-gons. Delete those edges and the vertice. And I've have this object that's going to be animated. I'm going to hit the D key so that I can adjust the pivot. Holding down the V key, I'm snapping to point to drag that down. Hit the D key again. So my pivot's now at the bottom, and now I will hold the X key and drag this up onto the grid so it's at the origin. I've got it all going up above. With this ready, I'm going to come over here. Actually, let me just delete the history, make this process easier. Delete history. I'm going to name the object. So this will be dancing cylinder underscore mesh. I'm going to freeze the transforms. I already know it's clean, but I'm going to check anyway. So mesh, cleanup, select matching polygons, face with more than 4 sides, hit apply to make sure that there are no n-gons or other issues. So there's my basic cylinder that I'm going to use for the animation. Now, when you're doing something that's going to be rigged and animated, so for example, if you create a character that's then going to be given a skeleton or a rig and then animated later on, it's very important that you make sure that the mesh is clean before you go into this process. The reason why is because as you're working on things, it develops a history. Now, some of that history can be harmful, which is why we go through this cleanup process on the geometry. And especially with UV mapping, you want to make sure the history is deleted because parts of the UVs will start coming undone. And the history does have a function, but in some cases it can actually be detrimental. That's why we do the cleanup. However, when you get into rigging and animation, it relies on the history to be able to make things happen. And so there's a difference between like mesh history, things that you're trying to build, that's non-deformer history, and history that's being used for rigging and animation, which is deformer history. But in essence, you want to avoid leaving history on your objects from the modeling and UV mapping process, because that can actually cause other issues. So make sure that this is clean and history-free. So basically it's saying this is its natural state. There's nothing it's looking at to try and undo or change or anything else before you jump into the rigging and animation process. Once you start the rigging and animation process, you don't want to delete the history. Now, there are some rare exceptions where you may have to make changes to mesh or something else, and you will need to delete the non-deformer history. But in most cases, try and avoid that by modeling clean, having things ready to go before you go into rigging and animation. So if you can do that, that's preferable, because otherwise, if you just delete all by history, then it will unbind the rig from the mesh, and it will cause other issues. So just avoid the history issues. So with this cleaned up, history's been deleted, transforms have been frozen. I'm not worrying about the material right now, simply because this module, I'm not focusing on the texturing. This is to introduce you once again to rigs and some of the basics, just to get you familiar with it. So I will take this file, save scene as, and I will call this dancing cylinder. And so that's saving into the project because I've got the project set. And I will end this video here. In the next video, I'll come back and we will start going through creating joints.